بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله أوله بلا أول كان قبله وآخره بلا آخر يكون بعده الذي قصرت عن رؤيته أبصار الناظرين وعجزت عن نعته أوهام الواصفين ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا حبيبنا وطبيب نفوسنا أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين سيما بقية الله العظيم بقية الله خير لكم إن كنتم مؤمنين ولعنة الدائم على أعدائهم وغاصب حقوقهم ومنكر فضائلهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين أما بعد عظم الله وجوهنا ووجوهكم والسلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.
اللهم صل على محمد
The series of discussions or the sessions that we are having to investigate the reality of love that exists in the school of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, and through which perhaps we could ignite our love towards Abba Abdullah Hussain and eventually towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We pointed out to the aspect where a person starts disconnecting himself from this dunya, from this world. He separates himself from this world in order that he is in the julus, in order that he is in the majlis, he is in the meeting with the beloved. And we mentioned last night the importance of remembrance. Remembrance, one might depict in the mind. Remembrance means just remembering in the heart, or just remember something, remembrance. However, remembrance also means in Arabic as zikr. That's what it means. That one does that zikr, that chanting, that remembrance. And we said that there are different types and levels of remembrance. There's a person where remembers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the beloved, through chanting, through action, through zikr. That's what it's called, by the word of mouth. And the other is by the heart. See, even the remembrance of the word of mouth, we said that one should come to the essential, or one must come to the understanding of the meaning of it. What is the meaning behind that? It is very important, not just the lafzi. There's another type of remembrance, or you could call it prayer. Remembrance is prayer, zikr is prayer, salat is prayer, which is also zikr, which is that pure opening of the heart of ours towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without any charchub, as they say, without any sort of parameters. Just dil ki baat, jo dil mein Allah se guftagu kare, baat kare, just speak to Allah, whatever comes in my heart. Which is also remembrance. It is not outside the direct of remembrance, outside these parameters of remembrance. Bas Allah ki taraf jo guftagu kare, right? That is also prayers, and that is considered within the Christian school or Christian theology as the best form of prayers for them, according to Christian theology. But see, for us, that is indeed prayers, but that opening of our hearts towards the beloved points out to the level of our understanding of the beloved. When Musa saw that man who was saying, "Oh my Allah, come down from the heaven and I will comb you, I will sit with you, I will speak to you, and I will tie you a ponytail," or whatever, the uftahu, the beloved was doing, who was believer of Allah. And Musa saw this, and what are you talking about? And Musa, when it comes to shirk, how he is, he's been asked by the Bani Israel. The Bani Israel always, when they used to go to Musa and they say, "Musa, why don't we have idols like how other people have?" Because it gives that sense of spirituality, it looks good You know, you have this idol, you go there, you have a temple, and you worship and you bow down. You know, like how the Pharaoh and how the people had. And even when Musa took them from, Egypt to the promised land, well, he never reached there anyways because they bothered him so much. So as he was taking them to the promised land, and they crossed the river Nile, and still, the verse says, their feet were not still dry. They're just coming out of the river, their feet is not still dry, and they passed through the village or town, that was there because they are going towards, Israel, towards, Palestine. There, they saw the people in the village worshipping the idols. So they come to Musa and they say, Musa, why don't we have idols? So he's like, my God, Musa really is like, he's very much, how you get, what do you call that word, the psychological term, a person gets really, claustrophobic. If you say a spider or something, or something like that perhaps on Musa, they bothered Musa for idols. We want to have idols and want to worship that. So Musa saw this man saying that, I know, when you come, O Allah, from the heaven, I will comb you, I will sit with you. And this is right. Then Musa goes and Musa addresses and says, Musa, God cannot be seen. He gets really upset with it. This is Rumi, mentions in his poetry. And then he goes to Allah, and Allah speaks to him. And Allah says, Oh Musa, you are there, but I am Vasla Madina, but I have. And I have sent you in order that you do that connection of the creation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not that you disconnect the creation from Allah, from God. Your purpose is to connect them. It's a bit of a very poetic way Rumi expresses it. Not to get into the theological argument what it's trying to say. But the moral of the story is that prayer of the heart, that sincerity, that purity, that is very important. But that is reflection of our own understanding of Allah. With that limited understanding, things that Allah have hair, Allah have feet, I'm speaking to Him in that fashion. You see? But those who have the true understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then they are the one who speaks, Ya man azhar al-jameel, wa satr al-qabil, yuhtikum al-sitr, which is the du'as of the Masumeen. So the du'as that we have from the Imams, those are really nothing but the praise of their heart. It just comes out. They go in that state of spirituality, of ecstasy, and then they just speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that becomes dua kumail. And that becomes the du'as of Sayyida Sajjadiyya. They are focusing and contemplating upon what is really Friday. Because it is one of the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is really the lightning? They are contemplating on it as an ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are thinking about it. They are intellectualizing it. And then that becomes the dua of Imam Sajjad when he hears the thunder strike. When he hears the news of death. When the Arafah comes. So that is the reflection of the heart of that saint, and that is the speech of that saint which becomes the dua. And it clearly reflects all of those ma'arif within it, all of the knowledge of God within it. You see? So, what we do now, what is the reason why our youngsters, our little children will ask, why do we really have to read in Arabic? Or why do we really have to do exactly the same way we've been asked to do? See, by doing so, we are trying to attract those blessings and barakat from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The actions of Hajj, going around Kaaba, praying behind Maqam Ibrahim, the Safa and Marwa and all that, was practiced by Hazrat Ibrahim. he practiced those actions. We are just following the same action which he did, right? We as a human being, we are exactly, replicating, we are exactly, copying what that, Prophet have done. Perhaps by doing so, we attract those blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which really becomes Hajj. That is the philosophy, that is the principle. So here, that speech, that zikr, that remembrance is very important to connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is through that speech itself Allah connected to us. So now, in order to connect to Him, we mentioned last night that the importance of disconnection. I'm in the dua and all of a sudden I'm on my prayer mat, sajjada, namaz, all of a sudden texting and chatting. It's this connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to the God, to Allah. That requires a disconnection. I mean, see how technology have reached to a point that previously we used to say that, Maulana, how shall I concentrate in prayer? Because, हमेशा मुझे ख्यालात आते हैं, मैं जब नमाज पढ़ता हूँ, ये इसके बारे में, उसके बारे में सोचता हूँ. अभी तो ख्यालात की जरूरत नहीं, यहाँ पे ज़रूर बोल के होता है. It just goes right there. It's no need of khayalat as well. Forget that. It really takes you away. Completely you're gone. With that, buzzer, with that sound. And mashallah, those khayalat to aapke the, lekin ye आवाजें और ये ज़ोर वगैरह पूरी मस्जिद को जो है distracting the concentration, right? So see, that disconnection is very important. At least let's look at the outward form of it. One really have to do these things. When I'm standing in prayer, I should turn to switch off my mobile. At least I should put it on the side. We are so much attached to these things that as if we don't have it, it seems that we are really missing out something. And this itself perhaps could become the source of azab in the khabar. We are alone with our mobile phone, It's a new thing. Previously those people who died buried in the grave, they don't have that azab. But for us, when we go there, we have this new azab that we don't have a mobile phone there as well. It's really, we get so much attached to these things that it becomes part of our being. That's something, and we all feel that. Even when we don't have a mobile phone, sometimes it feels like there's something happening. Right? Because it has become so one with our being. There's so much attached to it. Right? So therefore, that disconnection is very important. These things really require those outward steps. Switching it off, turning on, silent, particularly, when I'm praying, when I'm coming to a majlis, the speaker is speaking, alhamdulillah it's not here, but, other places, the speaker is speaking, many of the youth, youngsters, they are, just texting and chatting with each other. Not maybe outside, right here, and you could feel it, a person texts here, the brother there laughs. Yes. So therefore, it's very these are the etiquettes, the adab, and the akhlaq. We are doing that zikr, that remembrance, and that requires that disconnection. And that's what the imams have asked. At least conquer the zahiri and outward disconnections, the dunyavi and physical. Then we will enter that realm of intellectual, spiritual disconnections, which the imams have asked, and the ways that should be done. So here Imam says, Ilahi habli kamalul inqita, we said. Allah provide me that perfection of disconnection which is required. Man as a being, he is automatically connected to the creation that is around him. He is a social animal. It is very natural for him to be connected. And that's how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made us. That we rely on each other, we depend on each other, we like each other, we compete with each other. That is very natural. And this competition, this sort of this spirit of achieving is very much necessary so for us to achieve higher maqamat. If we say, oh, this waswas of shaitan, this sort of competition and jealousy, Allah shouldn't have kept this at all. He should have completely extracted out. This shouldn't be there. If that wasn't there, then we will not be even going towards perfection and kamal and acquiring good. That is very much required to be there. That desire is needed. Hazrat Isa alayhi salam said that this is the key of all evil is really that desire. He likes to conquer, he likes to do things, it's all that is behind that desire. So Isa said to Allah, take this desire out from insan. Then there was a man who was working in the field, he stopped. As he was plowing the land, he's a farmer, he left everything, he stopped and slept. There's no desire, nothing there. He will not be able to do takamul, he will not be able to work, function. But the point is, this desire that has been placed by Allah, the purpose and goal is something else, is not here. Is that akhirah, is those things that one have to really use this energy, channel this energy towards that. So therefore that inqita, as it says, is something that is necessary. Ilahi habli kabli kamalul inqita alayhi sallallahu Muhammad wa Muhammad. How can we bring about that disconnection? How can we really disconnect ourselves? The ahkam and the teachings of the Masumi alayhi salam are there for that very purpose. They act as a channel, they act as a weapon, they act as a tool, that's a better word. They act as a tool through which we gradually disconnect us. What is zohar? Asceticism. What is zohar? Asceticism. Is that? What is good akhlaq? What is justice? All of these things are, although our parents have taught, even if you are suffering and it's very bitter and you know that you will get in trouble, speak the truth. The child wants to protect himself, he has broken something, the father arrives and says, who have done it? The child knows that if I speak the truth, I'm going to get, beaten, right? But because of that, in order to protect myself, I'm not speaking the truth, I'm lying. But if I speak the truth, that is disconnection from myself for a higher value. That I will achieve, that I will gain, that I will get. That good quality of speaking the truth will come in me, although if I suffer. So how that is happening, how am I disconnecting myself from myself? Is through the akhlaqiyat, through the teachings. All of these ahkam, salat, prayers are for that very purpose. That's true asceticism. That's true form or tool through which one could disconnect oneself. When I am dedicating myself to these things. Now, as the Imam says, Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, a true zahid, a true person, a true man, is the one who do not get upset if something is taken away from him. He does not get upset. Which is pointing out to that very verse of the Quran, which is لَكَيْلَا تَعْسَوْا عَلَى مَا فَاتَاكُمْ وَلَا مَا أَتَاكُمْ. People, good people, a true human is the one who will not be upset or disappointed if something is taken away from them or something is given to them. And that is the part of those who are not grown up. When you give a child, something, he becomes restless. That's how insan is, that's how human being is. So if he is grown up, he will, and the thing usually, what is given is according to his capacity. If you give a child the keys of, a BMW which is standing outside, he will throw it away. But if you give him a box of a shoe box, for example, if he's at that 2 years, 3 years of age, or a spoon, to make that sound, he will be much happier. He will be more excited than that keys of that BMW that's standing outside. So it's according to that. It's in accordance to that capacity and that understanding. So for a man who have Allah, as Imam Hussain says, what he has lost, you give him whatever. That's why, Ali Abbas says, what difference does that make that if we go towards death and death comes to us when we are on high? There's nothing that could really please or disappoint this philosophy, this understanding. Nothing will happen to this person. So that becomes a true person who is completely disconnected, whether that be positive, good, or whether that be, famine, calamity. And that is why, in our teachings, in our Quran, that's what is there, قَالُوا إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. It was from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's taken away, it's taken back by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything really returns back to Allah. And these are the people who are sabir. These are the people who Allah has mercy upon them. See, these qualities you are acquiring by doing that sabr, by being patient. And Hazrat Amir says not only that, he explains it a bit more, because Quran always speaks it on a very principle level, and the Imams explain them. So Imam says that when a person, for him, it doesn't make any difference whether a thing is taken away from him or a thing is given to him, and through this, he is considered as a true ascetic, and through this, Allah will open up his heart towards his unseen guidance. So this inqata, this cutting of myself from this world, is allowing me to open my heart to the divine. It's opened my heart to really have that true sense of understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's how the prophets and the anbiya and the awliya got connected to Allah, right? They leave everything, they dedicate themselves, they go in the cave and worship. As they say for our youth, I would mention about the Prophet. He would go in the cave of Hira, and he would sit and meditate there. And it was Amir al-Mu'min who would take the food for the Prophet. And it was there where he entered that realm of spirituality. And Hazrat Amir says that when Jibreel used to descend, I could even could see Jibreel, that angel, because Amir al-Mu'min was on that level. And I could even hear the cries of Shaitan, because Shaitan would cry when Wahi would come. Right? So that dedication, that separation from the dunya, and then acquiring those qualities, it opens up the heart. And as a matter of fact, the greatest thing that would have impact on our soul is direct guidance from Allah. If someone tells us, we listen and we do. But if something happens directly, and we see His hand in it, we will be like amazed by it. We'll never make that U-turn from Him. Because it is directly, sent to our heart from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whether that be a dream, whether that be an incident, a miracle that happened, that really protected us when we call Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that will have a greatest impact. Because it's very personal. Right? Rather than someone telling us, this is good and this is bad, you should do this, you should not do this. But even for that to happen, that is necessary, which is inqata, which is disconnection, from this world. And as a first step, once again, and that is true, taking those, mustahabat, wajibat, fulfilling of that. These are the practicality of it. Never it will happen that we want to be loyal and sincere and dedicated and expect that, Fateh Bab, a door will open, towards us, and we will be Superman. We will be the best companion of the, Imam of our time. No, all of a sudden. No, it is gradual. And to all those principles, teachings that we know, we have to practice it, and then Allah will open the door. I always mention this because it's very close that I have experience with our Bahjat. that once I was with him walking on the street, I asked him, I come from America and studying here and I have to go back. Can you provide me with some sort of guidance, some spiritual zikr, perhaps a pill? If I take that pill, I become Superman. Because that's what we expect. That's what we really want. A quick change. And he says, he looks at me, he says, practice what you know, and Allah will open doors for you. It's very simple. I mean, if I know that praying on time is it, if I know that I have to practice it, don't expect things to change overnight. A revolution will happen. If I know that I have to wear hijab, practice it and you see the change taking place. Do not expect that will happen. If I know lying is bad, I have to really dedicate it and practice that, and that the fatihah will happen. And yes, it is true. First and foremost is the wajibat. And then the mustahabat comes later. The wajibat and then mustahabat. It's not like, I want to practice and I'm continuously practicing the mustahabat, forgetting the wajibat. If I have to, fill the vessel of wajibat and then transfer to the mustahabat and continuously do that. Alright? Sayyid Haddad, who was a student of Qazi, one of his students complained that the fatihah, they say, the terminology they use, say fatihah, meaning that, the conquering of the door, or the opening of the door of the divine towards the spiritual wafer, it wasn't happening. He was continuously trying. He says, he gives an example. You have to keep, either digging the ground to reach that pure fountain, or you have to keep pricking it, with a small nail or something. But if you keep doing that continuously, then all of a sudden with that little prick, you never know, you will arrive on a fountain that you can never imagine. All of a sudden it starts to flow, right? So whether that be little or big chunk of land that which pointed out that continuity is needed. One has to be continuous. It's not just, the 10 days, yes, we are spiritually high, it has its own ta'asirat, but at the same time, it has to be a perpetual and a continuous dedication of ours towards the teachings of Ahlul Bayt and Islam. Yes, these nights are there through which we are inspired by the teachings of Ahlul Bayt, by the sacrifice of the Shuhada. We are inspired by it, and we go in that direction. And we have to really start something. We say that, okay, now wajib is prayer, and on time I will pray. This is something that I got from the Majlis of Imam Hussain. I will do that. I know that the reward of it is that. Or I do an action which is ghair shari, which is not, which is haram. I will leave that. I will pick that. And I will continue to do it. Or a good act, for example, which we said. Sallallahu Alaihi Now this disconnection doesn't mean that one leaves everything. You have women and children, you have wife, you have brothers and sisters, you have parents. Sannyas, because I want to be spiritual. That is not in our faith, that is not in our school. In Christianity, that is becoming a monk, for instance. No. That disconnection doesn't mean that. One really have to be in the creation, with the people. But at the same time, have that disconnection in his heart, internally, not outwardly. And to the extent we find tradition that live in the world as if you're going to live forever, and prepare for the akhirah as if you're going to die tomorrow. When the people bury the dead body of a person and they just kind of made wishy-washy, it's like a very loose grave, not a good job. Usually the Rambo job, which takes place in our Hussainiyas and center in order to save some money. For example, we do something little here just to save some money, like we do that. That's very unfortunate. We always tend to be able to do that. I always say this, and I'll mention it here as well. This is the house of Zahra. This is the house of Zainab. It is her house, and she will take care of the money. So whenever we want to do something for the Hussainiyas and for the center, it should be the top class. and they will provide the money. You don't really have to worry about it. Try to say a few things, and then we give a contract to a, I don't want to take a name of a, nation, then they will get upset with me. To one guy, for one type of people, they do that job, right? Perfection. The Prophet said that make it right. Don't do it like that. Make it strong. Although it is just a dead person and we will just bury him and we are leaving it. No. The Prophet said make it right. So, and making it right becomes that disconnection itself. Look at that. It's a paradox in itself. That doing things right. Oh, I'm going to go to school in the morning, leave the bed, then the comforter, just like that. Oh, I'm going to sleep anyway next day, Even when you wake up for Fajr, although you're going to go back to sleep after 15 minutes, make your bed. That's training of the soul. That's teaching a lesson to our soul. Make your bed, go pray, and then go back. That's what, brings about that nazm and order, isn't it? Cleanliness. All of these things are pointing in that direction. So this inqita, this disconnection, doesn't really mean that a person completely leaves the dunya. No. He is here and he fulfills all his responsibility to the best way possible and on a higher level. But at the same time, he is outside that. Then what will happen after this? The next marhala, they will take one step further. Sallallahu Muhammad wa Muhammad. And gradually he will start seeing those anwar. He will start seeing its fruit. He will start feeling that spirituality in him. He sees that it is happening. He realizes that. He gets a sense of direction, and that is very important. To have a sense of direction. We all tend to carry out our actions and our amal left and right, everywhere. There's no direction, there's no continuity, there's no sense of direction, which gives that organization that really makes us who we are. Even in any sort of management that is needed, that's the strategy. The company must have that direction. Although a person works for that company and he's really licensed and he's loyal, but there should be a sense of direction of all of that. And once that happens, then he will start seeing the fruit of it, that light, which the Masumi in the du'as have pointed out to, which is the, our hearts will start to seeing that that light, which is the diya is the light. That light is seen by us when that is. And this is not like daim. It's not continuously that it will be there. It comes and goes. But he knows that is there. That exists. That reality is there. That ma'shuq is gradually starts to opening up. He has given you that green light, so to speak. And then it is here where the greatest thing he will come to the realization of his azamat. As we meant, if you remember the second day we recited that hadith that if Allah wants that his slave to be loved by others, he will place the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in his heart. And then he will open his heart towards the azamat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Towards his sovereignty and greatness. And if he really comes to the realization of that, he is the sovereign, he is the greatest. And that is why you have so much of emphasis, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, in our prayers, in our salat, is something that is first thing that we do when we enter our salat, when we enter, we say Allahu Akbar. That azamat is shown to that person who starts to disconnect. That greatness is shown to him. And at the same time, this is in accordance to his capacity as well. As that person is a great warrior, the warrior like Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, that azamat is according to his capacity. What he sees. That azim, he sees that azamat. And this is that really azamat on that ultimate divine level which really makes him tremble on that 19th night. And he says that I'm trembling to really meet my beloved, because Allah is azim. It's not a joke. Right? He is the creator. He is the Khaliq. And for this as well, as we said, you have this methodology provided by the Quran, by the Ahl Bayt, in order to contemplate on that azamat. As we are already doing good, as we are trying to disconnect ourselves, that contemplation is needed, that tadabbur is needed. وَسَنُرِيهُ مِنْ آيَاتِنَا فِي آفَاقِ وَأَنفُسٍ. One really needs to see the creation that Allah has created, so azim and great. Through this, some sort of greatness, some sort of awe of the Creator will come into our heart. And then we become, taslim, and then we surrender to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As we carry on, there are sort of many traditions and riwayat, and let me point out to this, that what will happen, the Prophet asked, that if that azamah, if that greatness is understood by the heart, what will happen? إِذَا دَخَلَ النُّورُ of azamah al-qalb what will happen, Abbas is asking, when that nur of azmat enters the heart of a person. He says that when that nur, his heart will expand, number one, and then he will be mushtaq, he will be desiring, he will be فَتَمَنَّوُ الْمَوْتَ إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. Right? He will desire that meeting of the beloved. He will be engrossed and focused towards that. And that's what we find where our beloved Amir al-Mu'min says, death to me is sweeter than honey, for example, Hazrat Qasim. Death to me is much, I desire more than the breast of the mother, that a child really wants that. That is life. Amir al-Mu'min, that's what death is. It becomes that. Because and then the next step, and we'll end with that step with few other examples, that gives that honor. Izzat of Allah. And that's why Imam Hussain said, death with honor and izzat is better than the life, with zillat. That's the message. Because he has achieved, he is on that level of recognizing the azmat, the sovereignty and the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then only he knows that what izzah is, what honor is. Al-izzatu lillah wa li rasulihi wa lil mu'mineen. That honor and izzat is of Allah, and then of Rasul and mu'mineen. It's vertical. That if Rasul have izzat, that doesn't mean that mu'min doesn't have izzat or Allah doesn't have izzat. It's izzat of lillah and Rasul and mu'mineen. So if the honor of a mu'min is snatched away, if he is disrespected, that is dishonor to Rasulullah. If an honor of Rasul is disrespected, that is dishonor to the whole nation, to all mu'mineen and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. So one really have to be very vigilant and very careful dealing with people, because that honor is very sacred. That honor is a reality, a true phenomena, aqli, if you connect our discussions to that. And that honor belongs to the mu'mineen, to Rasul and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He achieves that honor and izzat. And once he achieves that azmat, that honor, and his dealing, for example, if I'm respecting, I'm honoring a mu'min, my vision, my behavior is honoring the sovereignty of Allah, the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If I'm serving my family, it is the same thing. I'm serving Him. So me being on the prayer mat, me serving my family, it is nothing but the same. It becomes that. They say, Bahauddin reports this apparently, was one of the great mystique of our contemporary period in regards to Imam Khomeini. Says that when we were talabeh, when we were students, we used to go to the ziyarat of Imam Mirza, all of them together, and it was a thing, that's quite a habit of the students to go, particularly in home who are in Iran, to the ziyarat. And as soon as we reach, because we are so mushtaq and we have that ishtiyaq of ziyarat of Imam Mirza, as soon as we come down from the train, we go to our musafir khana, to our rooms, we throw our bags and we will go. But Imam Khomeini will stay behind. And he will prepare the food for those people who are returning from the ziyarat of Imam Ghazali. And look where Imam Khomeini went, where those Talabe who were there went, for example. So this is nothing but that insight that man should have, that disconnection. Even Hujub al-Nur, right, we recited, in that Dua Shabaniya, Fattasir Rahman, Hujub al-Nur, which says that Ilahi Habli Kamalun Inqata'alayk, wa Absar Qulub Bidiyahi Nadara Ilayk, Hatta Tagriq Absar Qulub Hujub al-Nur. Until my eye, my vision is immersed, is in full proximity, or seeing that hijab, it tears away, those hijab-hai nurani, those winds of light. There is hijab-hai zulmani, darkness, and there is hijab-hai nurani. Obviously, ziyarat of Imam Ghazali, so hijab-hai nurani, Now, for Imam, he's pointing out to that he is even carrying this hijab-hai nurani. He has reached to a point where he's witnessing, where he's seeing nothing but that sovereignty, that honor, that izzat, that respect that he's supposed to give. And that becomes the source or medium and vehicle through which God speaks when a person reaches to that point. And that's why it tends to create that sort of impact. It tend to create that sort of effect upon the hearts of people. It gives that awe. Whether a person we believe in him or not, it gives him that sort of awe, that sort of fear, which has been reported by many reporters who have interviewed, Imam Khomeini, right? Where does that get from? Is that ittisal? Is that relationship? Is that connection? Is that understanding? Is that insight that the person has? And it brings about that. Another thing which is mentioned in regards to him, which points out to from the very beginnings, as we said, it's not an overnight change, it's a gradual thing, which has been mentioned by Sayyid Qazi Tabatabai, the teacher of Allama Tabatabai, that Qazi himself was a man of high stations and maqamat, very spiritual, where if he tells a dead snake to come back to life, the dead snake came back to life. This is how powerful he was, Sayyid Qazi Tabatabai. A man who was seen speaking to the mountains, and in the language of the mountains, and then he reports to his student that this mountain belongs to the time of Sulaiman alayhi salam he was speaking to. This is Qazi we are talking about. So he used to, as we are speaking about him last night as well, he used to have sessions, and Sheikh Abbas al-Kuchani apparently reports this from him, who was one of the students of Sayyid Qazi, where he says that Imam Khomeini came to his session, to his class, when Sayyid Qazi was teaching, and he sat. And Sayyid Qazi did not show any reaction as he would. If someone comes, he would stand up or something. He just sat. And Imam came and he sat there in the session, in the class. And while he was there, he asked Sheikh Abbas to pick up the book of history, which talked about the previous sort of Shahin Shahs, which talked about previous kings and whatnot. And that was his habit. Qazi would ask me to read, and he asked me to read all of a sudden. We were shocked that why did he ask us to read this? And we started reading about the history in the past, and he stopped. He stopped him, and then he started speaking. The time is coming soon that the iman of the people will be tested. And Sheikh Abbas Kuchani says that after a long period, when the revolution was started, where Imam Khomeini was giving his statements against the Shah, all of a sudden it struck us that what was Qazi was talking about. Was talking about the future and the honor and the station of this man that he had, right from the very beginning. So it is a gradual and a continuous process of a person that he achieves. And if one really reflects at the books that he has at the age of 27, which is the Misbah al-Hida, Misbah al-Wilaya fi Tariq, Misbah al-Huda fi Tariq al-Wilaya, which is one of the book in spirituality that a student, if he goes and studies mysticism for about 30 years, then he will be able to understand what that book is. After understanding different levels and maqamat of spirituality. So alhamdulillah, we were blessed by these sort of leaders, by these sort of people. Where did they get that from? Whatever we have is from Muharram and Safar. It's that energy of Allah saying that really changes. Shaykh Qazi mentions that there isn't any place in the Haram of Abdullah Hussein alayhi salam that I haven't slept at night in the sand in order to really achieve that spirituality, those maqamat. So every place that you spot in the Haram, in the Sahan, right? In the Sahan, in that sort of courtyard of Imam Hussein, I have slept there. And once as I traveled from Najaf to Karbala for the ziyarat, and I was having difficulties to achieve that ultimate maqam of Tawheed, that's high spiritual maqam, what that is, whatever that may be so, we don't want to get into that, but he says that it was very famous that Abbas, Abul Fazl Abbas, is known as Kabe Awliya. Hazrat Abbas' personality was known as the Kaaba, as that sort of the Waliullah, of the saints. So I did the ziyarat, I was walking towards the ziyarat, I saw a man who was like a faqir, a crazy man who was there. And he was chanting this, Abbas Kabe Awliyast. And then all of a sudden, at that minute, it struck. I had that unveiling, and I saw the divine lights, that ultimate station which I was really trying to conquer and achieve through the tawassul of Abul Fazl Abbas. No wonder, Ya Kashif al-Karb, and Wajh Hussein, Ikshif Karbi, Bihaqi Aqiq al-Hussein. Oh, the Kashif al-Karb, which takes away the pain from the face of Hussein. Please take away my pain for the sake of the brother of Hussein. This Babul Hawaij, Abul Fazl Abbas, is the key for our desires, is the door for our du'as, for our supplication. It is through him. That's Babul Hawaij. So all of these maqamat is achieved through them, through the Masumeen, through the believers of the Masumeen, like they say. Abul Fazl, he was known for his shuja'at, for him being very courageous. He was the lion. But the greatest sacrifice for him, and the greatest courage for him, that this connection was for him, that he wasn't given the permission to fight. Abu Abdullah, when he comes, he says, no, we're not going to go and fight. The reporters have reported that on the 9th night, majority of the Umar Saad's army, who have high-ranking Umar Saad's army, they spend all night in order to really plan the battle of the day, but most of the time they spend thinking, how are we going to control Abbas? What is the strategy to really defeat him? They were more worried about Abul Fazl than for them, right? Than Imam Hussein. Because they knew who was Abbas. Because they had seen in the Battle of Siffin where he wails himself and fights. And everybody said, this is Amirul Mu'mineen. It is Ali ibn Abi Talib who has come to the battle, to the ground, the way he fought, the art of war he had. But when he unveils, it was Abbas. It was Abul Fazl. So they were really scared and worried. What will happen if Abul Fazl Abbas come to fight? How are we going to control? How are we going to defeat him? They couldn't really figure that out. But the test was something else. The destiny was something else. So when Abul Fazl comes and appears and seeks permission that, oh, my master, allow me that I sacrifice my life, then Abu Abdullah says that why don't you go fetch some water for Sakina, for the little children. And Abu Fazl goes to that place where they used to store water and takes that water skin from there and seeks permission from Abu Abdullah, and all the little children were in a state of joy. Now now Abu Fazl Abbas is going to fetch water. There will be water in the tents very soon. They were really waiting for it, for that moment. But when Abu Fazl is taking that respite, that part when that Sakina comes to part farewell to Abu Fazl, she says that she has that fear that everyone who have gone into the battlefield have never returned. And she doesn't want to lose the uncle. It was a very unique relationship between Sakina and Abu Fazl Abbas. Assalamu alaikum ya Abu Fazl Abbas. That hour comes when Abu Fazl approaches, cuts the ranks, approaches the army, cuts the rank through and reaches that Furat. When he reaches that Furat, he gets down from that steed, places that water skin, dips that water skin in the Furat, fills it with water, and the possibility it existed, and he takes the water in his palm, in his hands, and looks at it and says that, "O Nafs, go and fool someone else. You will not be able to fool the line of Ali. The children of Hussein are thirsty," and he leaves the water. This is Shuja'at.